Okay, picture this. May 1st, 1945. The battle for Berlin has been raging for 2 weeks straight. The Third Reich's capital is just rubble, and Soviet troops, they're fighting block by block, getting closer and closer to the Führer bunker. Their main goal, to capture Adolf Hitler, the ultimate symbol of the war, of fascism. But the massive question, the one hanging over everything, was, where was he? So today we're going to dive deep into one of history's really persistent mysteries and a secret that was kept for decades.
Yeah, and that immediate aftermath in Berlin, it was just unbelievably chaotic. Soviet soldiers, they pretty quickly stumbled upon this really grim scene in the Reich Chancellery Garden. They found the bodies of 6 children, 2 very charred adult bodies, and also skull fragments and teeth. What's really striking, though, is how fast the actual truth was known, at least known by a very small group of people, but then deliberately hidden from the world. We'll be looking closely at 2 young women, actually. Elena Rizhevskaya, she was a Red Army interpreter, and Katha Heuserman, who worked as Hitler's dentist's assistant. Their totally unexpected collaboration was absolutely decisive in identifying Hitler's remains.
Right. So our mission today is to trace that intense, really secretive hunt for Hitler's body. We want to get into the meticulous work, the details that led to the definitive identification, and then crucially explore why. Why was this huge truth suppressed for nearly 50 years? How did that shape the Cold War right from the start? And what was the impact on the people who actually knew?
Okay, so let's try and step into that chaos for a moment. Berlin, Soviets advancing, and just rumors swirling everywhere about Hitler, right? Some people were saying, oh, he died of a brain hemorrhage or suicide. Others insisted, no, he's alive, maybe hiding in the Alps or using a body double even.
Yeah, exactly.
And so Soviet radio itself was broadcasting that he was alive and kicking. How did all that contradictory noise affect the actual search on the ground?
Oh, just created total confusion, at least publicly. I mean, you had German radio announcing Hitler died, heroic death in battle. And his own chief of staff, Hans Krebs, he actually told Marshal Zhukov directly that Hitler was dead.
He told Zhukov? Yes. But then, the official Soviet line was completely different. Contradictory, even. Elena's unit, for example, they were part of the group that went into the Chancellery. They found Goebbels, Joseph Goebbels, and his family pretty quickly. But no Hitler. He was still missing. And Pravda, the main Communist Party newspaper, they flat out called the death claim a trick, a ruse.
While fighting was still going on, that seems odd.
It does, doesn't it? Why deny it so strongly right then and there? And adding to the mess, the initial search did find a corpse that looked a bit like Hitler, which of course just poured fuel on that whole body double legend. So yeah, layers and layers of confusion.
But okay, amidst all that public noise and official denial, you're saying there was a secret, focused search happening quietly. Who was doing that, and what was the breakthrough? What finally pointed them in the right direction?
Well, this was super secret. Just 3 people involved. Major Grabushin, Major Bystroff, and Elena, their interpreter. That's it. They managed to question an engineer from the bunker, someone who worked on the heating systems. And he'd actually seen Hitler's and Eva Braun's bodies being carried out.
Ah, a direct witness.
A direct witness. And his testimony led them to believe pretty quickly that Hitler had killed himself and had ordered his body to be burned. Apparently, they used up all the emergency gasoline stored in the Chancellery to do it. But finding the bodies themselves, that was pure chance. A soldier just happened to see the tip of a boot sticking out of a shell crater in the garden.
Just sticking out of the ground?
Yeah. He went to look, and there were 2 bodies in the hole. Now, the interesting part here is that Goebbels' body, found earlier, was identifiable because they used less gasoline on him, apparently. But Hitler's remains, the report said they were burnt to a cinder. The initial autopsy couldn't definitively say it was him. The doctors were like, well, maybe, but we can't be 100% sure.
Right. So burnt to a cinder. How on earth could they be certain then? It sounds like an impossible job.
This is where the teeth become absolutely central. The teeth were the key, because despite the fire, the upper and lower jaws were actually pretty well preserved. 15 teeth were still there. And Lena, the interpreter, she was given this burgundy-colored box. Inside were those jaws and teeth. She became responsible for them.
She had to carry Hitler's teeth around.
Essentially, yes. Even as the war in Europe officially ended on May 9th, she had this box. The very next morning, the team tried to find Hitler's main dentist. Couldn't find him. But instead, they located his assistant, Katha Heuserman, a young woman, but she'd been there for almost 10 years, assisting at every single one of Hitler's dental appointments.
Okay, so Kath, she becomes the crucial witness. What did she tell them? What was the proof?
Well, Keith apparently recognized them immediately. The gold teeth, the specific bridge work, the dentures. She said, yes, that's Chancellor Hitler, and Eva Braun's too. But here's the really clever part, the clincher. Before they showed her the actual jawbones in the box, they asked her to sketch Hitler's teeth from memory. Just draw what she remembered.
Ah, smart. So blind confirmation.
Exactly. And her sketch, it matched perfectly. It corresponded exactly to the jawbone the Soviets had found. All doubt just vanished. That burnt corpse from the garden hole, it was definitely, without question, Hitler.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they knew. Stalin knew. Almost immediately, really. Which makes what happens next even more, well, astonishing. Why? Why didn't Stalin just tell his allies Truman and Churchill the war was won, right?
Well, you have to understand the context. Not giving Stalin an accurate report on Hitler, of all people. Unthinkable for those officers. He had to know the truth. But keeping that truth secret, that could be incredibly useful. And this decision, really driven by Stalin's profound, deep-seated suspicion of the West. Well, you could argue is the first real move of the Cold War.
The very first step.
Quite possibly. His first official lie on the matter came pretty fast. Harry Hopkins, President Truman's advisor, visited Moscow. Hopkins asked about Hitler. Stalin just looked him in the eye and said Hitler was alive. Escaped. Maybe even got away to Japan in a submarine.
In a submarine.
Then, maybe 10 days later, Marshal Zhukov, the war hero, holds this big press conference in Berlin. Everyone expected him to confirm the death. Instead, he announced the complete opposite, said Hitler wasn't found, he was definitely alive, maybe fled to Spain, maybe Argentina, clearly just following Stalin's orders.
So keeping the proof secret gave Stalin leverage, an advantage.
Absolutely. It was an intelligence coup. He knew something they didn't.
Yeah.
It let him sow doubt, make the West look potentially foolish, maybe even distrust their own intelligence. It was a powerful card to hold in that emerging post-war tension, you know? Keep your rivals guessing.
It still seems so bizarre, though. Lying about something that huge right after they'd all fought together to win the war. Did Stalin think claiming Hitler went to Japan specifically gave him some immediate tactical edge? Or was it just sowing chaos?
It was, I think, pure strategic deception, a calculated move. And he doubled down on it at the Potsdam Conference, July 45, face-to-face with Truman and Churchill. He repeated the lie. Hitler's alive, probably in Spain or Argentina. But here's a really telling detail. Even though Stalin kept saying Hitler was alive, Hitler was never formally requested for the Nuremberg trials, not by the West, and Stalin never pushed for it either.
Because asking for him would expose the lie, maybe.
Or perhaps the rationale was simpler, as one insider later put it. Everything was kept secret in case one day we could use it. It's just that level of control, that strategic calculation that really defined Soviet operations then. And from the Western side, well, it obviously bred enormous mistrust. You could argue it didn't just start the Cold War, it poured gasoline on the fire right away. But for Stalin, it seems the immediate advantage of control, of knowing this secret, outweighed any long-term diplomatic fallout.
And the secrecy, it wasn't just some abstract geopolitical game. It had a truly devastating human cost, didn't it? Let's talk about Keith Heuserman again, the witness. What happened to her? That charge sounds utterly insane.
It was insane. After she gave that clear identification, they brought her back for a second questioning. Much more intimidating. Made her go over her testimony again and again for 5 hours straight. She never wavered, always confirmed it was Hitler. But despite cooperating fully, they basically arrested her. Told her she'd be gone for maybe a week.
Just a week.
That's what they said. Instead, they put her on a cargo plane to Moscow. She ended up in the Lubyanka prison. Solitary confinement. For 6 years.
6 years for identifying teeth.
And then, in 1951, they finally charged her. The charge was, and this is just, well, absurd. They charged her with helping a bourgeois state prolong the war by participating in Hitler's dental health care. And get this, that she should have killed him herself while treating his teeth.
That's unbelievable. Why make up something so elaborate?
It seems it was a direct decision from Stalin. Sentence any Germans who had witnessed Hitler's death, any potential witnesses. The goal is simple. Ensure nobody could speak about what they had seen. Silence them completely. So they sentenced Kath to 10 years in a Siberian forced labor camp, a gulag. She endured horrific conditions, extreme labor, starvation. At one point, she weighed less than 40 kilos, about 88 pounds.
Horrific. Imprisoned purely because she knew the truth and could testify to it. What happened when she was finally released after all that?
She was released in 1955 after Stalin's death in a flight thaw. But when she finally got back home, she discovered her husband, who had returned from the front years earlier. He'd been told she was dead. He'd had her declared dead and had remarried.
Oh, no.
After everything else. Yeah, just unimaginable hardship. And yet, somehow, she adapted. Her reported attitude was remarkable. She apparently just said, that chapter of my life is over. Now I'm starting a new life.
Yeah.
It just shows this incredible, extreme resilience some individuals have, even when crushed by the machinery of state secrecy.
Unbelievable strength. What about Elena, the interpreter? The one carrying the box of teeth. Did she ever get to tell her story properly?
Well, Elena became a respected writer later in life, but she was apparently obsessed with getting the truth about Hitler's death out there. In 1965, so 20 years after the war ended, her book about it was finally published. But it had to go through 2 layers of censorship first, including KGB.
So heavily edited.
Completely neutered, really. She was strictly forbidden from mentioning anything important. No mention of her access to the secret archives, no concrete sources, absolutely nothing about the official lies or the state secrets involved, which basically made her book, from a historical perspective, kind of worthless, as she later admitted. She knew this might happen, though. Apparently, she'd frantically copied documents by hand into 5 big notebooks while she briefly had access. But she still had to wait another 25 years before she could really tell the full story.
So nearly half a century this truth was kept locked away. How did it finally break free? What actually happened?
It was the collapse of the Soviet Union, really. That was the catalyst. 1991, you had that symbolic moment, the statue of Felix Dzerzhinsky, the founder of the secret police, being pulled down outside the KGB headquarters. It felt like the floodgates were opening. And then in 1992, the new director took over the state archives, and someone literally handed him a box. Inside, parts of Hitler's skull and the original investigation documents.
Just handed him a box.
Just like that, apparently. This kicked off what historians call the archive revolution. Suddenly, millions of previously classified documents started becoming available. Although interestingly, the KGB successor agency, the FSB, they still held on to some key things for a while longer. Things like some witness reports, Keta Huysman's testimony, for example, and crucially, the actual dental evidence we're punishing, the teeth and jaws.
It's amazing to think about the documents surfacing, but also the physical remains. Where were the bodies all that time? Not just the skull fragment, but the rest. Were they in that archive box too?
No, not the main remains. The story there is even stranger, maybe. The charred bodies of Hitler and Eva Braun after the initial autopsy were handed over to the Chief of Staff of the Soviet Third Army, which was stationed in East Germany. And for the next 25 years, every single time that army unit relocated its headquarters,
Yeah.
they dug up the box containing the remains and secretly reburied it in a new hidden location at the new base.
They kept digging them up and moving them for 25 years.
For 25 years. Unbelievable, isn't it? Finally, in 1970, the head of the KGB, Yuri Andropov, who later led the USSR, he advised the Soviet leader Brezhnev that they should just destroy the remains permanently. Get rid of them. Too much potential trouble, maybe. The secret memo detailing this final cremation and the scattering of the ashes, that document itself was only found in 1992 during that archive revolution. So that discovery basically closed the loop on the physical evidence.
So finally, after all those decades of lies, smoke, and mirrors, the full story emerges. Hitler died by gunshot suicide in his bunker April 30th, 1945. His body burned, identified, hidden, moved, and eventually destroyed. What does all this mean for history, for us, trying to learn from the past? What are the big takeaways from this incredibly prolonged deception?
Well, it really throws up big questions about state power, accountability, and how history gets written, doesn't it? I mean, even after the truth came out, the post-Soviet governments in Russia, they never really felt the need to formally explain the decades of lies or to issue any kind of official verdict on the Soviet regime's actions in this specific case. There's that old saying, nothing remains secret forever, everything comes out in the end. And maybe that's true, but the lack of any formal acknowledgement, any apology or explanation for the deception, especially people like Kathy, it leaves this kind of lingering shadow. It really highlights how historical narratives aren't just facts. They can be weapons, tools, deliberately shaped and hidden for political or strategic ends, affecting real lives for generations.
Yeah, this whole deep dive, it's just a powerful reminder, isn't it? The incredible lengths governments or powers will go to control a story, and the profound, sometimes absolutely tragic impact that control has on ordinary people caught in middle, like Keta Huysman, like Elena Rizhevskaya. It really hammers home that history isn't always just a settled account, it's often a battleground, yeah? With competing truths fighting it out.
Absolutely. And what's so compelling here, I think, are those tiny specific details, that burgundy box with the teeth, the sketch drawn purely from memory, the tip of a boot sticking out of the mud. These almost mundane details become the keys that unlock this massive, deliberately suppressed truth. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, it just underlines this really deep, persistent human desire, doesn't it? The drive to find out what really happened, no matter how deep someone tries to bury it, or how inconvenient the truth might be to those in power.
So maybe the final thought for you listening to this as someone who wants to be well-informed, perhaps it's a reminder to always question the official story a little bit, to look for those individual stories, the human experiences hidden behind grand historical narratives, and to understand that even chapters of history that seem totally closed, totally finished, they can still hold vital lessons for us today. Lessons about power, about truth, and about the incredible resilience of the human spirit in the face of it all.